In January 1972, Pink Floyd walked onto a stage in Brighton, England, and played an album nobody had ever heard. It had no title yet. It wasn't even recorded. But the crowd sat in silence and listened to the whole thing, start to finish. 14 months later, it would become one of the best-selling albums in history. Pink Floyd formed in London in 1965. Roger Waters on bass, David Gilmour on guitar, Richard Wright on keyboards, Nick Mason on drums. They were experimental, cerebral, strange, the opposite of everything happening in rock at the time. Their early years were defined by their original frontman, Syd Barrett, a brilliant and deeply troubled songwriter who began deteriorating mentally in 1967 and was quietly replaced by David Gilmour in 1968. Barrett's mental collapse never left the band. It haunted everything they made for years afterward. By 1971, Pink Floyd were successful but restless. Their albums were ambitious but sprawling, long instrumental passages, experimental sound collages, no real commercial breakthrough in America. Roger Waters wanted to make something different, more focused, more personal. He came to the band with a concept, an album about the pressures of modern life, time, money, mental illness, death, the things that wear people down. The band called it Dark Side of the Moon, a reference to lunacy, not outer space. They premiered it live before a single note was recorded. January 20th, 1972, at the Brighton Dome, the full album, in sequence, performed to an audience hearing it for the first time. They toured it for a year, refining the songs night after night, working out the transitions and the flow before they ever set foot in a studio. By the time they got to Abbey Road in May 1972, they already knew exactly what they were making. Recording took place across 2 sessions in 1972 and 1973 at Abbey Road, approximately 60 days total. The engineer was Alan Parsons, who had previously worked on the Beatles' final albums at the same studio. Pink Floyd pushed every piece of technology available to them: 16-track tape machines, analog synthesizers, tape loops, cash register sounds for money, the heartbeat that opens and closes the album. The Great Gig in the Sky features a vocalist named Clare Torry, who was paid £30 for a Sunday session and improvised one of the most extraordinary vocal performances ever recorded. There was one problem with the title. A British band called Medicine Head had released an album called Dark Side of the Moon in 1972. Pink Floyd were forced to rename theirs Eclipse. When Medicine Head's album quickly disappeared, Pink Floyd switched back to the original title, the name they'd always wanted. The Dark Side of the Moon was released March 1, 1973. It went to number 1 in the United States. It spent 937 weeks on the Billboard 200, nearly 18 years on the chart. It has sold over 45 million copies worldwide. Before this album, Pink Floyd's biggest American chart position had been number 46. After it, they were one of the biggest bands on Earth. What makes Dark Side of the Moon extraordinary isn't just the sales figures. It's that it functions as a single continuous piece of music, one thought, from the opening heartbeat to the closing one. An album about time and money and madness and death that somehow makes you feel less alone. Roger Waters wrote it thinking about Syd Barrett. Millions of people heard it and thought about themselves. Next episode, Nirvana, how a band from Aberdeen, Washington, recorded an album in 2 weeks that ended one era of rock and started another. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and drop your favorite Dark Side track in the comments. I want to know.